Next guest, his story, it's so unbelievably shocking. It's one of those stories, I read it in the Mail on Sunday morning, and really had to sort of reread a few pages and sort of, really, how could this possibly be happening in 21st century Britain? This, by the way, in a country where only, of course, a few months ago, well, we still got a teacher basically in hiding for his and his family's life after he did the, well, terrible deed, it would appear, in modern day Britain, of showing a cartoon image of the Muslim prophet Muhammad at a school in Batley, and was forced out of his job, was suspended simply for doing something as part of a class which was already approved by the school. Well, that's happened in one school. In another school, a school chaplain has effectively been sacked, he believes, simply for telling pupils they've got the right to think for themselves when it comes to issues of sexuality and religion. Well, let's talk to Rev Dr Bernard Randall, who's a former chaplain at Trent College near Nottingham, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us. Now, you are bringing an employment tribunal against the school, legal proceedings against the school, because you claim that you were forced out of your job because of what you had to say about a new LGBT policy brought into the school. And you discovered only in the process of going through this tribunal that the school had secretly reported you to the anti-terrorism prevent programme because you delivered a sermon defending the right of pupils to question the introduction of its new policies on lesbian, gay and trans rights. It is mind-blowing that I'm even saying those words in that sentence. But Dr Randall, tell us what it was that you actually said to pupils at Trent College, and why the school officials apparently thought this was somehow radicalising pupils.
Well, I think it's worth saying that I was asked to talk about the topic by a pupil. A number of pupils I talked to over the course of the school year had expressed unease or sometimes even just opposition to some of what was being taught as part of this LGBT friendly curriculum. And so I was asked to address it. So I did. And I wanted to say very specifically to pupils who have faith, whether Christian or other faiths also, and also those with some philosophical disagreements with the sort of ideology underpinning some of what was being said, because some of it's absolutely fine, not a problem with it, but some of it was ideological, and I wanted to address that. Mm-hmm. So I basically said, if you find for religious or philosophical reasons that you disagree with some of these things, that's absolutely fine. You're allowed to do that. No one can tell you what you must believe. No one has the right to say you must say things that you believe are untrue. But I really emphasize the importance of respecting people we disagree with.
Yep.
I was really emphatic. Loving your neighbour as yourself is a sort of key Christian value, obviously. Doesn't mean you have to agree with your neighbour. That could just never happen. What it means is when you disagree, you do it respectfully. There's no personal attacks. There's no excuse for abusive language of any kind. Respect your neighbour. Respect that your neighbour sincerely believes whatever your neighbour believes. And that should cut both ways.
This is all very, these are very old-fashioned values, Dr Randall. I mean, they used to catch on quite a lot. Now, this is in response to, bearing in mind, this is a school with a Christian ethos, which is why they do have a chaplain. I mean, my daughter's school is not a Christian school. We don't have a chaplain. There's a bit of a giveaway there. So it would be likely that a lot of pupils would have Church of England principles and beliefs. This was a sermon you delivered in June 2019. You said it was prompted by, concerns from pupils, raised by pupils, and your own concerns about the fact that the school was now sort of taking on the views of an organisation called Educate and Celebrate, and that organisation was invited to, in quotes, embed gender identity and sexual orientation into the fabric of the school. So, for instance, teachers were, this is extraordinary, teachers were urged to chant smash heteronormativity during a training session, whatever that is. They adopted a gender-neutral uniform policy and believed, this organisation say, that children should not refer to each other as boys and girls because that would offend transgender pupils. An awful lot of people listening to this now who have no hate in their hearts at all and would be horrified by anyone being discriminated against or being abused for their sexuality or their gender identity, whatever it is, would think this is all a load of absolute arrant nonsense and absurd. You just simply said to youngsters, look, be respectful, but you don't have to go along with everything and pretend to believe stuff you don't believe. And the reaction of the school was to report you to the anti-terrorism prevent programme. On what basis did they do that?
Well, I think it's really difficult to know what they were thinking, because on the face of it, what I said was, you should have been able to say in any liberal secular institution, respect others that you disagree with. And there are points here of disagreement that exist. I didn't even say what my views were specifically. I encourage people to think about it. So, to be honest, I can't peer into the mind of the person who reported me. One of the things that happened was that after I gave the sermon, I was sort of called in for what felt like an interrogation about why I'd done it and what it was all about. And they didn't seem to understand the sort of the Church of England's position on, for example, same-sex marriage just is what it is. Yeah. I mean, whether you agree or not, and you're entitled absolutely to disagree, it is what it is. And so I was saying, what I said was fair and reasonable and true. And because I wasn't budging on, well, this is just what the Church of England says, this is what some people believe, they seemed to think I had entrenched views, which was a bit odd. And they said, you rarely meet such entrenched views. And I thought, well, hang on, ask a historian when the Battle of Hastings happened, and you'll find entrenched views. I mean, there is just no dispute. But also,
your views being probably representative of the vast majority of the population. I wonder if you had been of a different faith, and we have seen the different treatment of different faiths in this country. And there does seem to be, particularly the Christianity, and I say I hold a candle for no religion, I'm an atheist, but some religions seem to have a special pass for preaching the views of their religion, which they, in my view, if we're going to have freedom of faith in this country, which I think we should, they have a right to say. And if the views of their religious texts, whether it's the Quran or the Bible or anything else, is a view on, say, same-sex marriage or homosexuality or anything, or identity or the role of women in society, they are entitled to preach that, and people should be entitled to question it. Now, the fact that a teacher in Batley who showed a Muhammad cartoon was then faced suspension for simply teaching something which was apparently on the school curriculum, has now faced death threats and is still with his family and young children in hiding because of that. It is absolutely extraordinary. The fact that you have basically lost your job and taking the school to a tribunal over the fact that you simply said I want children to be able to speak freely and to discuss these issues in a respectful fashion. In no way hate preaching. That you people on you can see in the Mellon study that the sermon you gave, we can see what you said. It's not a he said she said. We know what you said to the pupils. Are you worried about freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and what is happening in our schools right now?
I absolutely I am. And I mean, my heart goes out to the teacher in Batley, and my prayers are with him and his family. I mean, that's so much worse than what I've had to put up with, which has been pretty horrible. But yeah, if you cannot, I mean, I was doing my job as a school chaplain in a Christian school, saying, here are some things that some Christians and people of other faiths believe. You can believe it if you like. I wasn't even saying you must believe it, you should believe it. I said, make up your own mind. And as I say, you should be able to say that anywhere. And the fact that someone thought that this was so extreme to refer it to prevent, and that the other senior leadership didn't say, no, hang on a minute, that's a bit excessive. Or after the event, say to me, we're sorry, we dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
That would have helped so much if someone had said that, but they sort of doubled down on it and said that, no, this was appropriate, this was a reasonable response. And I just can't understand it. I don't think anybody who's read this story quite understands.
No, I mean, this is I mean, they did say they were going to censor in advance any future sermons. I mean, this is censorship of the people's rights and beliefs. It's censorship of religion. It is a massive curtailment of people's rights. People have a right to question these things. And again, a lot of these teachings that are happening in our schools, and I'd be the first person to defend trans rights and gay rights. I'm a massive proponent of same-sex marriage. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I absolutely defend the right of anyone who doesn't like that. It doesn't mean they hate gay people or they want any ills. People have an entitlement to believe and think whatever they want in this country. That's such a fundamental tenet. And I'm so worried that we are having this creeping censorship of these key issues. And even if I fundamentally disagree with someone's values or beliefs or religion, it's so important that people have a right to express that. And I think the message that goes out to those children and the message to other teachers and other chaplains and other schools, I think is really very worrying. So all credit to you bringing this case, and we're going to be following this. Love to speak to you again if you do get a resolution here. Rev Dr Bernard Randall, a former chaplain at Trent College near Nottingham. Thank you very much, and just extraordinary.